The Hurt Locker holds a very special distinction in Oscar history for being the first film directed by a woman to win both Best Director and Best Picture for Kathryn Bigelow. It also won Oscars for Best Original Screenplay, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Film Editing, while nominated for Best Original Score, Best Cinematography, and Best Actor for Jeremy Renner in a star-making performance. Taking place just after the start of the Iraqi War in 2004, Renner stars as an American soldier, Sergeant First Class James, who fills in the leadership role of an explosive ordnance disposal team after his team leader was killed on a mission. As their job entails them of disposing improvised explosive devices, or IED, it is a very dangerous and stressful job as they can detonate at any point with an electronic device such as a cell phone out of nowhere. With Sergeant Sanborn, played by Anthony Mackie, and Specialist Elders, played by Brian Geraghty, under his leadership, the situation becomes precarious when James shows abnormal behavior when it comes to dealing with the deadly bombs that makes the already tense situation even more so than necessary, causing a rift between the team members. The very first time that I watched this was in the summer of 2009. I have just left the Air Force for personal reasons. My life kinda left in the wind as I tried to figure out what I want to do with myself. With a combination of high praise that it was getting from critics with my strong interest in the US military, I watched this in the theaters the first chance that I got and walked out somewhat conflicted. I would have admitted that I overall liked it, but I wasn't entirely convinced of its greatness. This, I will say, is the point where I was getting really interested in the concept of criticism, all thanks to an awesome website called Spill.com that specialized in film criticism in a very entertaining fashion. But even I have to admit, I wasn't very good in how to form my opinions coherently due to my naivete when it comes to filmmaking. I was looking at the basics, like the story and characters, which are important, but without really understanding how a movie does tell its story. Needless to say, I put it behind me for several months until it came up again during Oscar season when it became the front runner for the top prize, and that's when I began to pay more attention to people's opinion of the film. One of the things that caught my attention was the criticism it received from military personnel about the inaccuracies and falsehoods it presented, as well as the abhorrent behavior of the main character. As someone who was discharged from the military, I found that to be an odd criticism. While a movie should be as realistic as possible when tackling a very sensitive subject such as the Iraqi War, that doesn't mean that it should reflect real life. Its main objective is to tell a story through its characters and themes that it wants to explore, and while I didn't get it at the first time, I actually do understand where the filmmakers are coming from. It was enough for me to want to see it again for a second opinion, and I'm very glad that I did because it was almost like I watched a completely different movie as I fell head over heels for it. War movies such as Saving Private Ryan, Das Boot, and Platoon tend to want to explore the intense experiences of the soldiers and see the psychological effects it can have on them, such as PTSD. The Hurt Locker is no exception to that, but it does present a completely different scenario that doesn't get explored much. Instead of looking at the sufferings that soldiers have to go through, this film looks through the eyes of one that not only feels comfortable in his deadly environment, but thrives in it. Like a drug addict, Renner's character gets an adrenaline rush as he carelessly carries out his mission, which, to an outsider, comes off as reckless, but the film doesn't deny that the man has the skills and drive to complete his mission, which takes on a more balanced view of his character. He doesn't lose his nerve and acts as if he has the situation under control at all times, almost as if he is oblivious to the risk that he is putting himself into, as well as the stress he is heaping onto his team as they try to cover him. While I do respect his courage, I do completely understand the two's uneasiness of their team leader, even to the point of when they were contemplating on accidentally setting off a charge while he is in range of the kill zone. Not that I would condone it, but I do recognize the temptation given the situation they are in if I were in their boots. This film does a great job in giving us so many sides of an issue and presents its three main characters as very human while never really getting to know who they are, but I can still connect with them on a more empathetic level, which I feel is much more emotionally effective. Instead of a more action-oriented look which typical war films tend to rely on for the excitement and pace of a story, this takes on a more thriller and suspenseful feel, and this is where the film shines the brightest. The look and feel of it is full of authenticity, thanks mostly in part of this being filmed in a desert location. The way the cinematography and editing gets into the minds of the characters and get us to see through their eyes and their thought process is what helps me empathize with them. Having the audience get a taste of combat on the ground along with the uneasy tension that can escalate in a heartbeat. Some of these scenes are gripping as they just ooze with anticipation with each and every second because we do know where the danger might come from, we just don't know where it will come from. It even does that one movie trick that I despise and make it essential. The film's most iconic sequence, the first explosion at the beginning of the film, is done mostly in slow motion, first seeing the bomb exploding in the background, and then we see the shockwave as it moves across the terrain, disturbing the ground and objects to give us a sense of the real destructive power of these deadly devices. The first time I saw this in the theaters, I rolled my eyes so hard that it nearly went to the back of my head because of a certain filmmaker who likes to use this technique so liberally. By having watched this part a few more times, I now get what slow motion can be used and how it can be used effectively in a storytelling sense. It is both beautiful and disturbing, and it is such a brilliant setup for the suspense by giving us an idea of what kind of danger that our characters are going to face for the rest of this film. I can't really think of any negatives for this that I can say for sure, and I don't want to force myself to come up with any. Sure, as I mentioned before, we really don't know these characters, like say their backstory, but I've come to the realization that we don't really need it in order to understand them. And admittedly, I don't find the suspense all that strong, but I feel that I've gotten everything and more from it that makes this a fully engaging and entertaining film and something that I would revisit every once in a while. So for that, I'll easily give this a 4.5 out of 5 and how much it deserves that Oscar, even though a lot of people now thinks that it doesn't really deserve it. Well, whatever, I really do love this film, I think it's great, and I do hold this as one of the best war films that I've ever seen.